The courtroom doors swung open, and a man walked in. His clothes were worn down, boots scuffed, and his eyes carried a weight deeper than simple fatigue. No one knew who he was, yet a heavy silence trailed behind him like a shadow that refused to loosen its grip. Even Judge Judy glanced up, sensing something unusual approaching the bench. He didn't argue. He didn't offer explanations. He only murmured a single sentence, and suddenly the entire room seemed to forget how to breathe. The faint buzz of the lights filled the space as the doors creaked again. A figure stepped inside, moving slowly and deliberately, as though each step held a story no one had asked to hear. Judge Judy noticed it immediately, picking up on the shift before anyone else. The man entered without hurry, as if rushing would dishonor the pieces of his life he carried with him. His boots looked like they had traveled far. The worn patches on his jacket, some torn, some carefully stitched, hinted at a past he kept to himself. The courtroom, usually restless and impatient, fell into an unnatural stillness. Even the bailiff straightened, watching him with quiet awareness. He avoided eye contact, at least for now. He stopped at the plaintiff's table and gently placed a folded paper on the edge, like someone setting down a fragile memory. The shop owner sitting there pulled back slightly, as though even the paper disturbed her comfort. Judge Judy cleared her throat, her voice steady but softer than usual. "Sir, your name?" The man hesitated. A long, heavy silence filled the room. It wasn't defiance or forgetfulness. It was something deeper, pain. His lips parted, then closed again, as if speaking his own name meant stepping back into a life he had tried to leave behind. Finally, he spoke, barely above a whisper. "Elias Grant, ma'am." His voice carried the roughness of nights spent outdoors and days spent trying not to disappear. The shop owner rolled her eyes, shifting impatiently. "Can we start already? I have a business to run." Judge Judy's gaze snapped toward her, sharp enough to quiet the room. "You'll wait your turn." The woman leaned back, slightly subdued but still holding on to the confidence of someone used to getting her way. Judge Judy turned back to Elias. "Mr. Grant, the plaintiff says you were bothering customers outside her store. Is that true?" He slowly lifted his head. His eyes were tired, but beneath that exhaustion was something unbroken dignity. "No, ma'am." His hands rested on the table, fingers marked with scars, nails clean but worn from work no one there had witnessed. Judge Judy noticed. The plaintiff scoffed. "Please." He was hanging around, blocking the entrance, making people uncomfortable. I had every right to tell him to leave. Elias didn't look at her. He didn't argue. His jaw tightened, not with anger, but restraint. Judge Judy leaned forward. "Mr. Grant, why were you there?" The question lingered, heavy in the air. Elias took a slow breath, eyes fixed on the table. Then, in a quiet voice that felt heavier than any accusation, he said, "Ma'am, I wasn't asking for money. I was asking for something else." Judge Judy's eyebrows lifted. The shop owner stiffened. The room held its breath. "What were you asking for, Mr. Grant?" As attention shifted to the plaintiff, the shop owner straightened like she was stepping onto a stage. A polished smile spread across her face, trying too hard to hide something bitter underneath. The tension in the room tightened, as if everyone sensed what was coming. She pushed her chair back sharply and walked forward, her heels clicking with impatience. Her posture showed irritation, not fear, the kind of irritation that comes from believing you're above the situation, above the person, even above the truth. "Your Honor," she began, her tone filled with practiced outrage, "I run a small business. I have responsibilities. I can't deal with people like him scaring away my customers." Elias remained still, unmoved, like someone who had endured storms louder than her voice. Judge Judy raised an eyebrow. "People like him?" The woman froze for a split second before recovering. "You know, disruptive individuals. He stood outside my store for hours, lingering, blocking the entrance, making a scene." Her hands moved dramatically, as if painting him as something dangerous. She looked around for agreement. None came. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. "Did he speak to you or threaten anyone?" "Well, no," she admitted, stumbling for a moment before covering it with attitude. "But he looked rough, like he wanted attention." Judge Judy's voice sharpened. Looking rough is not a crime. Wanting attention is not a crime. Be specific. The woman crossed her arms. Honestly, I shouldn't have to explain this. I have a right to protect my business, and I won't be made the villain because he won't take responsibility. Elias finally looked up, not at her, but at the judge. There was something new in his eyes now, disappointment. Judge Judy caught it. Mr. Grant did not interrupt you. Don't interrupt him with assumptions. The plaintiff's confidence began to crack in small, almost invisible ways. She tried to regain control by speaking faster, louder. He was making everyone uncomfortable, Your Honor. Judge Judy cut her off. Uncomfortable doesn't mean unsafe. Why did you approach him instead of calling authorities? I didn't want trouble, she said quickly. It sounded like a lie. A small one, but noticeable. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. Then why speak to him at all? The shop owner swallowed, her next words coming too fast. Because I recognized him. The courtroom went still. Elias looked up sharply, confusion crossing his face. Judge Judy remained steady, recognized him. From where? The woman opened her mouth, then closed it. Color drained from her face as she realized what she'd revealed. Judge Judy leaned back, studying her. Elias held his breath. I shouldn't have said that, the woman whispered. The silence deepened, heavy and suffocating. Elias's fingers curled slightly, trembling, as if the truth inside him had waited too long to surface. Judge Judy broke the silence, her voice calm and firm. Mr. Mutter, Grant, you may respond. He exhaled slowly as though releasing years of weight. When he raised his head, the room saw something unexpected, not anger, not shame, but steady resolve shaped by hardship. A quiet strength lived in his eyes, built from surviving things no one had seen. My name, he began, swallowing, used to mean something. His voice cracked, not from weakness, but memory. I was a medic in the U.S. Army. A soft murmur spread through the room. The shop owner's expression tightened as his past clashed with the image she had created. I served 2 tours, he continued, came home, tried to rebuild. But some things follow you back. Some wounds don't stay overseas. Judge Judy's expression softened slightly. You don't have to explain everything, Mr. Grant. Just tell me why you were outside her store. He nodded, hands clasped as if holding his story together. I recently lost my place. Been moving around, trying to stay out of trouble, trying to keep to myself. The shop owner rolled her eyes again, but this time it drew no sympathy. Elias continued, his voice low but steady. I don't ask for money. I don't bother people. I just stand where I need to. Judge Judy tilted her head. And that day, he hesitated. A brief pause, a slow blink, tension in his jaw. I was waiting for someone. The plaintiff scoffed. Oh, please. The gavel struck sharply. Interrupt again and you'll be removed. She sat back, angry but silent. Elias looked down again. I didn't bother anyone. Didn't speak unless someone spoke to me. People walked by. Some ignored me. Some nodded. Some... He gave a faint, tired shrug. Not everyone's kind. The words settled over the room, heavy and undeniable. Judge Judy leaned forward once more. Mr. Grant, who were you waiting for? He swallowed, gripping the edge of the table. It's complicated. Try me. He lifted his eyes. There was grief there. History. Something deeper than the accusation, a shadow that followed him. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the shop owner suddenly lunged forward, panic breaking through her composure. No, she blurted. He can't say that. Every head turned toward her as Judge Judy's gaze turned ice cold. The entire courtroom snapped to attention as her voice echoed, filled with panic and something far darker. Judge Judy's gaze lifted slowly, sharpening like a blade drawn from its sheath. What exactly? She asked, each word measured. Are you trying to stop him from saying? The shop owner froze, her mouth still open, breath caught halfway out. It was as if she realized she had exposed more in that single outburst than in everything she'd said before. The confidence she'd been wearing began to slip, cracks forming under the harsh courtroom lights. "I just mean," she stammered, her hands twitching at her sides. "He lies, Your Honor. He twists things. I don't want this turning into some emotional story." Judge Judy leaned back, and silence settled over the room like a heavy curtain. "That's not your decision," she said quietly, her calm tone far more intimidating than any raised voice. The woman swallowed hard. Judge Judy turned back to Elias. "Mr. Grant, finish what you were saying." He nodded, his eyes briefly flicking toward the plaintiff, not with anger, but with a kind of understanding, as if he recognized her fear more than she wanted anyone to. "I was waiting for someone," he repeated, his voice now steady and grounded. "Someone who was supposed to meet me there." The judge held his gaze. "Who?" Elias hesitated only for a moment. "A woman. Someone who said she would help me." The shop owner's shoulders tightened. Her jaw clenched, and a small, involuntary shake betrayed her composure. "And she didn't come," Elias continued. "So I waited." Her breathing grew quick and shallow, panic creeping in as the truth began to close around her. Judge Judy noticed. Everyone did. "What is your connection to this man?" the judge asked, turning back to the plaintiff. The woman blinked rapidly. "None," she said too quickly. "Absolutely none." Her tone was too sharp, too defensive. Judge Judy's expression remained unchanged, but the atmosphere in the room shifted. "You said earlier that you recognized him," she pressed. "From where?" The woman's lips parted, but no answer came. Elias lowered his gaze again, his fingers brushing the folded paper he had placed earlier, the one she had avoided touching. Judge Judy tapped her gavel lightly, not as a warning but as a signal. "Bailiff, bring me the file the clerk just delivered." A thick folder filled with reports was placed in her hands. Both their names were written on the tab, something the plaintiff clearly hadn't expected. The color drained from her face. Judge Judy opened the file. The sound of the pages seemed louder than anything else in the room. Her eyes scanned the first page, and her expression shifted. When she looked up again, her gaze was cold and steady. "Miss Carver," she said slowly, "why didn't you mention the police report you filed against Mr. Grant 2 months before this incident?" The paper in her hand barely moved, but the weight of what it contained was unmistakable. Miss Carver stood frozen, as if the truth had seized her in place. Elias lifted his head slightly, already aware of what was coming. Judge Judy placed the report flat on the bench, her fingertips pressing down with controlled precision. "According to this," she continued, her voice calm but chilling, "you filed a complaint 2 months earlier, and in that report Mr. Grant did nothing wrong." A ripple moved through the courtroom, not loud but sharp, like the sound people make when a false narrative breaks apart. Miss Carver shook her head quickly. "That report isn't accurate. The officer misunderstood me." Judge Judy raised an eyebrow. "So you're claiming the officer falsified your statement?" The woman froze, realizing the position she had put herself in. "No, I mean, You didn't expect this report to surface here," Judge Judy finished for her, her tone tightening. Elias lowered his gaze again, but his jaw set firmly. He hadn't reacted before, but this struck differently. It was a quieter kind of pain. Judge Judy turned the page. "It states here that Mr. Grant was standing outside the store, not speaking, not asking for money, and not causing any disturbance. The officer also noted that you appeared agitated and insisted he leave without cause." The words hung in the air, quiet, undeniable. Miss Carver's hands began to tremble. "Your Honor, he makes people uncomfortable." "I have a business to run. I'm not concerned with your feelings," Judge Judy interrupted sharply. "I'm concerned with facts." A faint shift passed over Elias's face, not relief, but something closer to gratitude, as if he was no longer being overlooked. Judge Judy leaned forward. "Why did you file that report if he did nothing wrong?" The woman swallowed. I thought he was following me." Elias's head lifted sharply. Judge Judy's voice flattened. "Was he?" Silence followed, long and suffocating. "No," Miss Carver admitted quietly. "Then why lie?" Her eyes darted around the room, unable to settle. because he kept standing there, watching, waiting. Waiting for whom? Judge Judy asked. The woman blinked, struggling for an answer. I don't know. But Elias did. He picked up the folded paper he had placed earlier, smoothing it carefully, as if it carried more than just ink. "Your Honor," he said softly, "there's something she doesn't want you to know." Every head turned toward him, especially hers. "Don't," she whispered, her voice breaking. Elias slowly unfolded the paper, revealing a creased photograph. Judge Judy leaned forward. "Please, not that," Miss Carver murmured, her face draining of color as if her greatest fear had just entered the room. The photograph trembled slightly in Elias's hands, its worn edges fluttering like a fading heartbeat. Judge Judy's attention sharpened, now searching for the motive behind it all. Elias held the picture with care, like something sacred. "Your Honor," he said, "this is why she recognized me, not because I did anything to her, but because she saw this." He extended the photograph. The bailiff carried it to the judge with unusual care. Judge Judy studied it closely. Her expression shifted just enough to show that it meant something real. She lowered it slowly. "Miss Carver, explain why your reaction changed when I saw this." The woman shook her head quickly. "I don't know what he's talking about." "Yes, you do," Judge Judy replied, her tone cold, "and lying won't help you." Elias didn't look at her. He spoke as if addressing a memory instead. "She saw me before," he said. "Years ago, at a veterans' charity event outside her store. She took this picture with us, smiling for cameras. Promised she'd help anyone from our unit if we ever needed it." Miss Carver's breath caught. Those events were for publicity. Businesses do that all the time. Judge Judy narrowed her eyes. "So you admit it was for publicity?" I didn't mean." Elias spoke again, quiet but cutting through her words. "I came back after my second tour. I asked if she remembered me. She brushed me off, said she was busy, told me to try a shelter down the road." A collective breath moved through the courtroom. Miss Carver's composure began to crumble. Her hands wouldn't stay still. Judge Judy leaned forward, her voice firm. "Why did you lie to the police? Why push him away? Why pretend you didn't know him?" The woman stared at the floor, her lips trembling before tightening into a thin line. "Because I didn't want him reminding people of that event." "So your reputation," the judge said slowly, "matters more than a promise you made." "It was years ago," she snapped, losing control. "People say things they don't mean." Elias closed his eyes briefly. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Judge Judy's tone softened, not with sympathy, but clarity. He wasn't asking for money. Elias opened his eyes and met her gaze. "No, ma'am. I was asking her to keep her word." The statement landed heavily, echoing through the silence. Miss Carver stepped back unsteadily. Elias lifted the photo again, turning it slightly toward the room. "This isn't the whole story," he said. "There's more." Judge Judy raised the photograph again, slowly, as if uncovering something no one wanted to face. The courtroom leaned forward, breaths quiet, as though the image itself carried a pulse. Across the room, Ms. Carver gripped the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Elias remained motionless, not stiff, just still. The kind of stillness you see in someone who has learned to expect disappointment. "Your Honor," he said softly, though his voice held steady, "that photo was taken outside her store 5 years ago." Judge Judy examined the image again. "This is you?" she asked. Elias nodded. "And this," the judge continued, pointing to the smiling woman beside him, "is you, Ms. Carver." The plaintiff flinched as if the paper had burned her. "It was during a charity event," Elias explained. "She took pictures with members of my unit and promised she'd help us adjust when we came home. Said it was the least she could do." Ms. Carver's breath trembled, but she forced out a brittle scoff. "I take hundreds of photos with customers, volunteers, random people. I can't be expected to remember every face." Judge Judy lowered the picture slowly, her gaze sharpening. "You remembered his face well enough to file a police complaint 2 months before this." The woman opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat. Her eyes flicked toward the photo as if it were accusing her. Elias stepped a little closer to the bench, not aggressive, just present. "When I came back after my second tour," he said, "I walked into her store with that picture." He nodded toward the creased photo. "I asked if she remembered the promise she made. She said she didn't have time for charity cases, that she was busy, that I should stop trying to cash in on old events." A murmur of disapproval spread through the gallery. "I never said that," Miss Carver snapped. For the first time, Elias met her gaze directly. His eyes were calm but heavy with truth. "You did." She stumbled back slightly, her voice shaking. "You don't understand the position I was in. I had a business to run. I couldn't just help everyone. Someone you promised to help," Judge Judy finished for her. The plaintiff's breathing became uneven, her eyes darting between Elias, the photograph, and the judge, as if each angle exposed a truth she couldn't escape. Judge Judy's tone softened, but only slightly. "This picture isn't just a memory. It's proof of your connection to him and your effort to deny it." Elias lowered his gaze again, his voice carrying a quiet ache. "I stood outside her store that day because I hoped she'd remember who I was. Not because I needed money, but because I needed someone to keep their word." The room sank into a deeper silence. Judge Judy exhaled slowly. "Ms. Carver, answer me directly. What exactly did you promise him?" Her lips parted. The color drained from her face, her posture sagging as if something inside her finally gave way. I can't say," she whispered. "Not here." Judge Judy leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You will." The tension in the room tightened, pressing in from all sides. Ms. Carver's shoulders curled inward as if the weight of her silence was crushing her. Judge Judy's voice cut through the stillness. "You will answer the question." The words landed with more force than a gavel. Miss Carver tried to speak, but her throat closed, trapping the truth somewhere between fear and pride. Her eyes flicked toward the exit, a quick, instinctive glance. Judge Judy caught it immediately. "You are not leaving this courtroom, not until you tell the truth." Elias stood still, his expression free of anger or triumph only, the quiet ache of someone who had waited years for honesty. Miss Carver pressed her trembling hands against the table. "Fine," she snapped, her voice breaking. "Yes, I made a promise during that charity event, but it was symbolic for publicity. Just a gesture, nothing more." A wave of disgust moved through the audience. Elias's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Judge Judy leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "So you promised to help veterans not out of compassion, but for marketing." The woman shut her eyes tightly. "I needed good press. The store was struggling." "It was just a photo opportunity." "Just a photo opportunity," the judge repeated, her voice cooling. "With people who serve this country, people who believed you." Miss Carver's breath caught, her fingers gripping the table harder. "And when one of those people came back for the support you promised," Judge Judy continued, "you dismissed him publicly." "That's not fair," Miss Carver whispered weakly. "It's accurate," the judge replied. The room absorbed the truth in silence. Elias finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "I didn't want her money. I wanted her to honor what she said. She told us she cared." Miss Carver's composure shattered. "I panicked," she cried, the words bursting out. "I had customers inside. I had a reputation to protect. I thought you were just trying to guilt me into helping you." Elias blinked slowly. "I was trying to return something to you." Judge Judy tilted her head. "Return what?" Miss Carver shook her head frantically. "No, don't. He's twisting things." But the panic in her voice gave her away. Elias reached into his jacket and pulled out a smaller item wrapped in worn cloth. He placed it gently on the table, as if it carried something far more valuable than it appeared. "Your Honor," he said quietly, "I didn't go to her store to ask for help. I went to give her something that belonged to her family." The courtroom fell silent. Miss Carver staggered back, hitting the table behind her. "What did you bring?" Judge Judy asked. Elias slowly unwrapped the cloth, revealing a piece of metal that caught the light. A dog tag. Time seemed to pause. Judge Judy's eyes widened slightly. Ms. Carver covered her mouth, a sob escaping. This belonged to someone she lost but never truly faced, Elias said softly. Judge Judy leaned forward. Mr. Eist, Grant, whose name is on that tag? The metal glinted under the lights, but the judge's attention had already shifted to the monitor across the room. A video file appeared on the screen, frozen on an image of Ms. Carver outside her store. Her face went pale instantly. Elias remained still. Judge Judy's voice lowered. "We're going to watch this footage." The bailiff pressed play, and the courtroom dimmed slightly. A timestamp appeared, matching the day Elias said he had been outside the store. The room leaned in as the video began. On screen, Elias wasn't pacing or causing trouble. He stood quietly near the entrance, holding the same folded photo. His posture was calm, patient. Then Miss Carver appeared, not composed, not professional, but irritated and sharp. She approached him, her expression filled with disdain. Her voice cut through the recording. "You need to leave. You're ruining the front of my store." Elias's voice in the footage was gentle. "Ma'am, I'm waiting for someone." "Not here, you're not," she snapped. "People like you drive customers away." A ripple of discomfort moved through the gallery. In the video, Elias lifted the photo, offering it carefully. "You took this picture with us 5 years ago. You made a promise." "I don't care about some event," she snapped back. "Go to a shelter or beg somewhere else, just not here." Present-day Ms. Carver flinched, as if struck by her own words. Judge Judy's jaw tightened, a flicker of anger breaking through her calm. "Ms. Carver, is this how you remember it?" The woman shook her head quickly. "That's not how it happened." "He antagonized me in the footage," Judge Judy interrupted. "You approached him, raised your voice, and he remained calm." The silence that followed felt heavier than the video itself. Elias looked down at the dog tag again, his thumb brushing over the engraved letters. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of a moment he had lived through too many times. "That day wasn't about me," he said quietly. "It was about someone I lost." Miss Carver swallowed, her eyes locked on the frozen image of her past self. "Please," she whispered, "turn it off." Judge Judy didn't. Instead, she rewound the footage a few seconds to the moment Elias held up the photograph. "Mr. Grant," she said gently, "tell the court what hurt the most in that moment." Elias's voice wavered only once. Realizing she remembered the picture, but not the people in it, Miss Carver covered her face with both hands. Judge Judy leaned forward. Mr. Judy leaned forward. "Grant, tell us who you were waiting for that day." Elias slowly lifted the dog tag, the metal catching the light like a memory that refused to fade. His silence now felt heavy, like the pause before something too painful to carry alone. "Mr. Grant," Judge Judy repeated, steady and firm, "who were you waiting for?" For the first time since he entered, Elias seemed unsure how to begin. His thumb traced the worn edges of the tag, the engraved name carrying years of weight. The courtroom grew quiet, not out of courtesy, but because something deeply personal hung in the air. "I was waiting," he said slowly, "for someone who never came." Judge Judy nodded for him to continue. He swallowed, his gaze drifting somewhere beyond the room. "Before my second tour, my unit stopped at Miss Carver's store. She held a charity event, took that picture with us, and promised that if any of us ever needed help, she'd be there." He paused, his voice thinning. "One of the men in that photo didn't make it back." Ms. Carver stiffened, her hands twisting together. Elias raised the dog tag slightly. "This belonged to Corporal Matthew Hale. He was my closest friend." A quiet gasp spread through the courtroom. "He asked me to return it to someone," Elias continued. "Someone important to him, someone he believed would care, someone he thought would want to know his final thoughts." Judge Judy's voice softened. "And that person was—" Elias drew in a shaky breath. "His sister's best friend. The woman he considered family. The one he talked about all the time." He looked at Ms. Carver for only a second, not accusing, just carrying a sadness she couldn't escape. "Yes," he said. "Her." Ms. Carver's breath collapsed. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, that can't, Matthew." "Yes, ma'am," Elias said gently. "He spoke about you like you were the clearest piece of home he had. He wanted you to know he kept the bracelet you gave him. He was still wearing it the last night I saw him." Her legs gave out and she sank into her chair. Judge Judy's voice dropped. "So that day outside her store, you were waiting to give her the dog tag?" Elias nodded. "He died believing she cared. He asked me to bring this back to her, so she wouldn't feel alone in her grief." Tears streamed down Miss Carver's face. I didn't know." Elias's voice cracked for the first time. "I thought if she saw the photo she'd remember, but all she saw was a problem at her door." No one moved. No one spoke. Elias looked down at the dog tag, his eyes wet. "I waited because I owed him that much." "You don't break a promise to a dying man." Judge Judy exhaled slowly. "Mr. Grant, tell the court exactly what Matthew Hale said in his final moments." Elias lifted his gaze, the weight behind it unmistakable. "Tell us his last words," she added, her tone quieter now. He blinked, as if pulling himself back into that moment took effort. The room seemed smaller, the air heavier. "His name was Matthew Hale," Elias said softly. Miss Carver broke into sobs, not dramatic, not forced, but raw and uncontrollable. Elias continued, not out of coldness, but duty. "We were hit during a night patrol. It was chaos dust, smoke, you couldn't see more than a few feet. But I heard him call my name. He swallowed hard. I got to him as fast as I could. He was already fading, but he grabbed my hand, held on tighter than he should have been able to." The courtroom listened in complete silence. He said, "Tell her I kept it." At first I thought he meant his gear, or maybe a letter. Elias looks gently toward Miss Carver. "But he meant the bracelet, the one you gave him when you graduated." She covered her mouth, sobs breaking through her fingers. "Oh God, Matthew." Judge Judy's voice grew quieter, steadier. "What else did he say?" Elias's eyes filled with tears. "He said she deserved the truth, that he didn't want to be remembered as some hero, just as her friend, her family." His voice faltered slightly. "And then he said something I didn't understand at the time." Elias took a trembling breath. "He told me to tell her not to hide from the world, not to let fear turn her into someone cruel." Miss Carver doubled over, sobbing into her hands, the weight of those words crashing down on her. Judge Judy looked at her with firm compassion. "He was talking about you." "I know," she whispered. "I know." Elias lowered his gaze. "It wasn't my place to judge her. I just promised him I'd deliver this and make sure she heard what he said." Judge Judy straightened, her voice firm again. "You carried his last words across years, across continents, through your own struggles, and she turned you away at her door." Miss Carver sobbed harder, her entire body shaking. Elias didn't look at her. There was no anger on his face, no sense of victory, only quiet sorrow, and a duty fulfilled far too late. Judge Judy reached for the dog tag, lifting it carefully. "This isn't just an object," she said. "It's a final message. And Miss Carver, you refuse to hear it." Miss Carver collapsed back into her chair, completely undone. Elias spoke softly. "I wasn't just there when he died. I was holding his hand. And what he left for you was meant to change your life." Judge Judy steadied herself. "Mr. Grant, tell her the message in full." Elias closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing himself before stepping back into that memory. Across the room, Miss Carver trembled, her breathing uneven, the kind that comes when the past finally catches up. "Mr. Byatt." "Grant," Judge Judy said gently but firmly, "tell her." The courtroom fell silent again, the low hum of the lights the only sound. Elias lifted the dog tag, its surface reflecting the weight of the promise he had carried for so long. "When Matthew grabbed my hand," he began, his voice low. "He wasn't afraid for himself. He wasn't thinking about dying. He was thinking about you." Miss Carver's sobs broke through her hands. "He told me," Elias continued. "She pretends to be strong, but I know she's scared. Don't let her stay that way. She shook her head, tears slipping through her fingers. "Matthew, why?" Elias went on gently. "He said you hide yourself, that when you're hurting you push people away, that you've always cared deeply, even when you acted like you didn't." Her body shook harder with every word, each one breaking through the walls she had built. Judge Judy's voice remained steady. These were his final thoughts. Listen to them. Elias nodded, his eyes glassy. His last message was simple. He said, "Tell her to be kind. Tell her she deserves the world she's afraid of." His voice broke. "And then he asked me to tell you he was proud of you." Miss Carver went completely still, as if time had stopped. Then her knees gave way and she collapsed into the chair, tears pouring freely, now no longer hidden, no longer resisted. "I didn't know," she whispered hoarsely. I never knew." Elias looked down at the dog tag, his expression softening with compassion. "I tried, ma'am," he said quietly. "I really did. I didn't come to your shop asking for charity," Elias said quietly. "I just wanted to honor what he asked of me. I thought hearing those words might help you heal." Miss Carver pressed both hands to her temples, bending forward as if she was barely holding herself together. "And instead I pushed you away." Judge Judy watched her for a long moment. "Miss Carver," she said firmly, "this wasn't just unkindness. This was avoidance. Avoiding grief, avoiding grief, avoiding truth, avoiding responsibility." The woman nodded through tears. "I thought if I ignored everything tied to him, the pain would stop." Her breath broke. "But it didn't. It just made me cold." Elias lowered his gaze. "Pain doesn't disappear when you bury it. It just waits." A heavy silence filled the room, slow and human. Judge Judy folded her hands. "Mr. Huff, Grant, after everything you've carried and everything she denied, what do you want from this court?" Elias looked up. His eyes carried exhaustion, but also a quiet dignity untouched by bitterness. "I don't want money," he said, "but I do want something, and she needs to hear it." He straightened slightly, as if speaking the truth had given him back a piece of himself. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted, less accusation now, more something almost sacred. Judge Judy's voice softened. "What is it you want?" Elias exhaled slowly. His hand rested on the dog tag in his palm. "I've thought about this for a long time," he said. "Maybe too long. And the truth is, I don't want anything from her that she doesn't choose to give." Miss Carver looked up, tears still falling, but her expression changed, confusion replacing fear. "I've slept on benches," Elias continued, "under bridges, days without speaking to anyone. But none of that hurt as much as believing I failed Matthew, that I failed the one thing he trusted me with." His voice tightened, but he didn't look away. "But that wasn't her fault, and it wasn't mine either. Grief makes strangers out of all of us." Judge Judy nodded slowly. Elias turned toward Miss Carver, not harshly, not coldly, just honestly. "I don't want your money. I never did." Miss Carver swallowed. "Then what do you want from me?" "For you," he said softly, "to keep the promise you made that day, the one you made to all of us in that photo, to be the person he believed you were." Her lips trembled. "I don't know if I can be that." "You can," Elias said simply. "He believed it, and I believe it too." A stunned silence followed, not shock anymore, something closer to reflection, even mercy. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Mercy, Grant, that is an extraordinary amount of grace from someone who was treated the way you were." Elias gave a faint shrug. "Anger is heavy, ma'am. I've carried enough already." The words settled over the room like something finally resting after a long fall. Miss Carver wiped her face, struggling to breathe evenly. "If I try to make this right, does it matter?" Elias paused, then nodded once. "It would matter to him," he said, "and if it matters to him, it matters to me." That broke something in her. She nodded quickly, small and desperate, like someone grasping for a chance they thought they had lost forever. Judge Judy tapped her gavel, likely not as punishment, but as recognition. "Ms. Carver," she said, "you've heard him. What you do next defines who you become." The woman's voice shook. I want to try." "Good," Judge Judy replied, "because now we're going to talk about what making it right actually means." The courtroom went still again, tension shifting into something heavier, accountability taking shape. Judge Judy's voice carried calmly, but with authority. "Ms. Carver, your actions harmed more than one person. Not just Mr. Grant, but the memory of someone who trusted you." Miss Carver nodded silently, tears falling without resistance now. "Punishment may satisfy emotion," Judge Judy continued, "but it does not repair what was broken. Restitution does." Elias lifted his eyes slightly. "You will support Mr. Grant's transition through a Veterans Assistance Program," the judge said, "not as publicity, not as charity, as responsibility." Miss Carver hesitated only a moment. "I will, I promise. Monthly involvement," Judge Judy added firmly. "Real participation, no performances, no image management. This is not for your business. This is for the promise you broke." "I understand," she whispered. Judge Judy turned to Elias. "Mr. Grant, you carried something far heavier than most people ever will, but today that burden is no longer yours alone." Elias lowered his head slightly. Not pride, just quiet acceptance. "And this court will ensure Corporal Hale is remembered properly," Judge Judy added, lifting the dog tag carefully. "Not as evidence, but as remembrance." Miss Carver broke again, but differently this time. Not collapsing inward, but releasing something she had held too long. Elias stepped closer and extended the dog tag. "It belongs with you," he said gently. Her hand shook as she took it. "Thank you for bringing him back to me." Judge Judy watched them both, her expression steady, softened by understanding. "Justice," she said quietly, "isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just people choosing truth over fear." The courtroom exhaled, slow, collective, final.